moral injury of the job, the increasing administrative burden. Almost 80% of all physicians work for somebody else, not for themselves anymore. So that's very different. Like, I wouldn't even take advice from somebody who practiced 20 years ago. The landscape is just enormously different.
You have a really impressive background from Astrophysics at Fermilab to becoming an ENT surgeon.
I do care a lot about authenticity. It's not like every day, the birds awaken me and dress me like Disney style or anything like that. And I was acutely suicidal because of like the trauma of just experiencing all of that and then again having to grapple with the aftermath. Like, I had nightmares about that attending for just months to years after.
Oh. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the WebbMD Podcast. Today I have a very special guest who will tell us about her kind of path to medicine and kind of what she's up to these days. Frances Mei, welcome to San Antonio and WebbMD Podcast.
Thank you so much, Webb. It is an honor to be here. I love the Webb space. Like, this is gorgeous. Really appreciate getting to come out to San Antonio for the first time. Hopefully not the last.
Yeah, San Antonio is a great city. I've been here kind of off and on for about 20 years, the military and then college, residency. But it's like a second home for me. I'm originally from Louisiana, but San Antonio is it's a great city. We love it here. So I got to make it out to Nashville at some point. I've only been there once.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, this is very interesting. Obviously, a lot of character. I already feel that. I was at the Pearl earlier. Oh, nice. I think Nashville feels a lot more commercial than so far my experience in San Antonio. But absolutely, we got to get you out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So to just give a little introduction to myself, I'm Frances Mei Harden. I was an ENT surgeon. I left my practice and really my whole career as a surgeon 3 months ago today. Wow. So I'm 90 days out.
Congratulations.
It feels like 90 days sober and that I should be given some kind of like coin to commemorate it.
Yeah. How are you feeling at this point?
I feel really good about it, honestly. And I do care a lot about authenticity and sharing like the good, the bad, and the ugly. So it's not like every day, the birds awaken me and dress me like Disney style or anything like that. But just honestly, for the first time in my life, I'm still working more than 100 hours a week, easily, every single week. Yeah, wow. No question. I didn't even take a break. I didn't even get a sabbatical.
Not even a weekend off?
No.
You went straight to work?
Yes.
Wow.
I did. Yeah. And I was, even while I was practicing ENT full time, I was doing these jobs on evenings and weekends. And so I did pretty seamlessly just continue working. But what's interesting is that I'm working for the first time ever 100 plus hours a week, and it feels like what I chose. And therefore I have a lot more of an appetite for it and also just like a better perspective showing up to it. That's new for me.
When did you first knew you wanted to become a doctor? Was it in high school, college? Did you always want to become a doctor?
So I always joke that as a kid, I wanted to be a graphic designer and my parents wanted me to be a doctor. So we compromised. And of course I became a surgeon. Okay. That's the compromise. Okay. When your parents are very convincing. I'm an only child too, so there was a lot of rhetoric that was like, we really need a doctor in the family.
Are your parents doctors?
Nope, first doctor in the family.
I see. How much of that do you think influenced kind of your decision that you just made 3 months ago?
I believe that they had an enormous effect on my decision to go into medicine. I would say that the decision to leave 3 months ago, that was 100% me. That was like maybe one of the first decisions I ever made at 33 years old that was by me, for me. It was still done, I think, very respectfully and very peacefully with buy-in from my mom. We lost my dad about 13 years ago now.
Sorry.
Yes, thank you. He actually died of a sudden cardiac event while I was interviewing for medical school.
Really?
So, with my mom, because I knew this was coming for a couple years and was preparing for it and had all this objective evidence that I could work and find genuine success in other industries, I was able to bring that all to her, and we kind of presented it, planted the seed years ago. So by the time it happened, she was like, that makes sense. You've done well. Like, you have shown that you could make it work. I think that what's funny, certainly trying to combat the allegations, like, this doctor just had a bad week, she's just burnt out, like, she's really going to regret rage quitting. It's like, it couldn't be farther from the truth. And honestly, some credit that I would give every physician I know is that we're pretty responsible, fastidious, deliberate, evidence-based people. So of course I proved to myself, to my family, to my mom, that I could make things work, could find good work for me elsewhere before just quitting. Like, obviously I had plans A through Z.
Yeah, and I think a lot of physicians can kind of resonate with that. I mean, you spend a lot of time along this path, and you have this goal to become a physician, whatever specialty that you want to come. I don't know what the term for this is, but when you get there, you reach that goal, and then you're like, okay, now what? Or you feel accomplished. And for me, I'm just always asking myself, like, what's next? I've accomplished this, and always trying to figure out what the next career goal is. And I feel like a lot of people constantly do that over and over again, and it's almost a self-harm in some sorts. But you have a really impressive background, from astrophysics at Fermilab to becoming an ENT surgeon. How did you get into astrophysics? Was that something that your parents exposed you to when you were younger, or just kind of picked up?
They did actually send me to space camp when I was, in middle school. They sent me down to Huntsville, and that was like such a huge joy. That was like a really fun summer. I got into really astrophysics though through my high school, the Illinois Math and Science Academy. They had us, there was no school on Wednesdays. It was actually a full-time research day. So every single Wednesday we got shuttled out to whatever second site we did research at. And so I worked for a few years at Fermilab, got to be a member of the Dark Energy Survey, and that's how I got my first publication at 16.
Wow, that's impressive. Yeah, and then so you went to Notre Dame, graduated at 20 years old, and then Case Western for medical school, and then residency?
University of Missouri.
Missouri, okay. And how was residency for you? Because I've seen some of your posts, and you've talked about some of your experiences. I know in any surgical residency, it can be challenging, long hours, and a lot of call, and a lot of responsibilities. How was it for you in terms of residency?
Yeah, I definitely feel differently about residency now, even than I did 3 years ago. Like, I'm grateful. Thankfully, with time, your perspective shifts and evolves. And so while I will say I still think I was a really objectively strong resident, very good at like completing tasks, and my hands have always been good, and I was honest and, worked hard. But my attitude, I think it's chicken or the egg, because I think I probably was a pretty challenging resident to have, because by the end, by my chief years, I was pretty vocal. Like, as a chief, I literally remember saying to my attending, this is a Rorschach reference from Watchmen, the movie. He gets carted away, and they put him in jail, and they drag him in jail, and all the guys are up at the cages screaming at him and kind of threatening him. And he says, I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me. So you can kind of imagine what type of a chief resident I was. Again, patient care, pretty exemplary, like working with other services and like consults. Again, I think like a very strong resident. But over the years, I think the dysfunction in the department took a toll on every single trainee. Cannot think of a single exception. So myself, like, included in all of that. What I will say, one of the easiest ways for me to like describe some of that dysfunction is just to point out that when I was a new 3, we didn't really have any PGY2s. Okay. So one was terminated. That was kind of a years-long process, a lot of back and forth. The other one was held back a year. But what that means is that as a PGY3, the 3 of us had to do all the tests of a 2 and a 3. Wow. As a 4, we did everything as 3s and 4s. And as chiefs, we had no 4s. So I was still, as a new 4, taking junior call with senior call for 6 months. Same thing, when we were seniors, we had no one to split call with. And I just think that if you take my word for it that the people were also jerks in addition to all of that, like even in a really peaceful department, that amount of strain on the workforce, I think would cause strife and dysfunction and tension. In terms of how I view things differently now, I know that, of course, we're going to get into like my thought process and the fact that I left 3 months ago. I'm really grateful that my residency experience was as malignant as it was, because it made it 10 times easier to leave. I actually think, and we talk about this a lot at home and like in my family, if I had had a totally average kind of run-of-the-mill residency experience where, sure, people are always going to be nasty on some days, but just like overall, you just keep your head down, you get it done, and you graduate, it probably would have been quite hard to leave the golden handcuffs. But I'm grateful because it was, my experience was like quite extreme. It made it a no-brainer. People always say like, well, how could you leave the golden handcuffs? If you had been through what I had been through, you'd say, I will find a way to make money elsewhere.
Gotcha.
And that's what I've done.
Yeah, and why do you think residency has to be that way? It doesn't have to be that way, but why do you think it's the way it is now?
I think the next generation of doctors deserves like so much better than what we had. I am shocked and disappointed that what I experienced, that was not unique or personal to me. It was not unique to my generation. When I speak with physicians who are in their 50s and they hear about my training experience,
they laugh at it.
Well, they're like, here's what's crazy. They literally say, it was that way when I rotated on surgery. I'm shocked it hasn't changed more than it has.
Yeah, or a lot of older physicians would say that you guys have it easy. Yeah.
I know. And that we even see that kind of as a society where like older generations are like, this younger generation doesn't want to work. I don't know. I mean, it's such like, it's not based in any evidence. I actually am of the school of thought that most attendings today wouldn't get into medical school today. I actually believe that. They have no idea, like they didn't experience the medical research arms race. The numbers just weren't the same. Like I literally, one of my attendings, he became a physician because his uncle was like, I think you're a nice guy and you'd be a good physician, right? And they wrote a letter to the hospital.
A lot of nepotism.
Yes, and also just like no standardized, admissions. It was like, I like this man, right? And then they get grandfathered in. Not to say that he isn't a phenomenal physician, but I'm just saying, would he pass today's extraordinarily rigorous standards for how people get in? So I think that training does not need to be this way at all. We're kind of waiting for the old guard to change over. I have found personally that it is not a great use of my time and resources to try and change the minds of the old guard. So I am never trying to do that. I actually did try for years and years. That's kind of how I view what I was doing in residency. What I'm doing now is just trying to talk to the next generation of physicians. Like that's where a lot of change can be affected, because those people haven't maybe made up their minds on what's acceptable behavior in the hospital or not. So I just think, I had a senior resident who used to say, hurt people, hurt people. And so there's a lot of that rhetoric in surgical training. I'd love to know if you experienced any of that, of just, yes, we had it much worse, or I survived it, so you do too. Like that's character building.
Yeah, certainly. Any type of, well, I guess just residency overall, it can be malignant. There can be people that bad apples in the bunch, but overall, surgical residency, you hear about all these stories. In terms of specific ones that I kind of encountered, just that mindset that, hey, we're the baddest team here in the hospital. No one can tell us shit. We go around, walk around, and do whatever we want, and we just talk to our residents or medical students in a certain way. I've had some residents or attendings that would send medical students for hours to go grab food, like this TV show that was out a long time ago about, it's called Making the Band, and P. Diddy made the people that were in this TV show go to walk across this huge bridge to go get some, I think it was apple pie or something like that, but so a lot of the hazing part of it, I saw that throughout residency, and and a lot of misuse and mistreatment. So certainly it's kind of widespread, and most people just don't talk about it. So I'm glad we have a platform where you can share your experiences and talk about things that are unacceptable.
Yeah, I love that so much. I'm glad that you phrased it that way, because that thought, I'm the baddest person in the hospital and you can't tell me anything, I really push back on that with my version of it, which is I'm the baddest person in the hospital.
Yeah. And
I'm going to have standards.
Yep.
And I'm going to defend the totally defenseless, which would be like a med student or a junior resident or an intern. I just think that this is a misalignment. And I literally said this to my program director one day as a 4, where I said, I find my values and the department's values don't align at all. This is a teaching hospital. Can you tell me honestly that what this ex-attending did on this day in the OR, is that teaching? Is that congruent in any way with teaching? Does that create a teaching environment? Does it make people feel psychologically safe at work? And I won that battle, but I do think that what's so interesting to me, and what I've really, again, tried to tell a lot of doctors over the years, is, the concept BDE, very made famous by, I would say, like Pete Davidson several years ago. I just think that fundamentally the older guard of physicians who behave that way, they have a different idea of what BDE is that I would posit is completely wrong. So when they think it just means I'm going to be a crazy jerk to everyone and you're going to bring me my food. It's like BDE to me, and I have had the privilege of working with multiple Nobel Prize winners growing up. That was true even with my astrophysics research at Notre Dame, as well as in high school. Guess what all of those guys didn't do? They never attacked other people. Definitely didn't put down learners. That's like such a pick on somebody your own size type of thing. Also, ideally, pick on no one, which is how I would categorize those personalities. But that's real BDE. Is ask me any question. I'm not going to be pretentious about it. I don't feel like people need to kiss the ring, right? I just think that when you look at it that way, all of those surgeons who really put that on you and they're kiss the ring.
Yep.
That is SDE.
Yep.
It wasn't always received super well when I told surgeons that, but I was I'm going to be real with you. Yeah. You have the opposite of BDE.
When I would assume that when you first started residency to when you were 4 or 5, that you're I guess you being more comfortable with being more vocal about kind of your needs and expressing your dissatisfaction of kind of what was going on. How do people take that?
Yeah, to your point, because I actually have had people ask me about this, or as an intern, they want to stand up for someone who's getting the shit beat out of them at the hospital. Okay, I can relate. I get how stressful that is. And it's stressful because either you're a bystander who doesn't stand up for people who are getting beat up at work, or you're putting your own neck out in a very critical time. All I can share is what I personally did, which I think is okay. This is how I navigated it. I never stood up for myself meaningfully until halfway through 4th year.
Good.
And ENT is a 5-year residency, so I was a PGY4 halfway through that year. And it was just that conditions had actually deteriorated to the point that I was going to die, or I was going to have to stand up for myself. That's legitimately how bad it was before I said anything. I do think that when you look at that zoomed out and mathematically, I had a lot more power. I was one of the senior residents. They had nobody in the class behind us. That permitted me, even though it was a nightmare to be missing a class of residents behind us, it actually permitted me to maybe be more vocal once I did become vocal, which would only be second half of 4th year and then really chief year. And until then, people might have just said, I don't know, she doesn't smile enough. But that would be probably the primary complaint.
Yeah.
I've never smiled enough. I got that feedback in medical school as well.
Yeah. What did you enjoy most about residency?
Oh my gosh. You really are stumping me here. I think the only thing that I like about it is that it made it really easy to leave 3 months ago.
Gotcha. So I was reading some quotes the other day. It says 67% of U.S. physicians leave clinical practice each year, mainly due to burnout, early on-time retirement, and workload. And this translates to tens of thousands every year. And they gave some quotes about different countries like the UK and England, 15,000 and 23,000 doctors. They left the NHS before retirement in 2022 and 2023. The Philippines, over 3,500 licensed doctors retrained as nurses actually since 2000 to increase immigration prospects. So there's a whole bunch of different reasons why physicians are leaving medicine. That's burnout, stress, administrative burden, desire for a better work-life balance. When did you first think about that was even something that you would consider? I've had those thoughts before. They're fleeting thoughts, and they don't really last long. But I always tell students now, since I've been out in practice for 5 years, that the first thing you need to do once you get into medicine is figure out your exit strategy. When was the first time that you had that thought?
The first time that I really wanted to quit was probably PGY2 year. That's when we had a super malignant chief that year. That's really when like a lot of the dissent was sowed in our residency program. So I'd say PGY2 year. But like you said, actually, to your point, it was like fleeting, because what was I going to do? Stop what I was doing in the middle of it? I think that, like so many of us, I'm very competent at taking it in the jaw, putting my head down, and just like, well, I signed up for a 5-year program. So I wasn't really ever going to leave as a 2. Mm-hmm. It's just the first time that I seriously considered it. What I think is really important is that, especially in light of the physician shortage, the mass exodus, like, number one, there's a lot of systems problems. I know there's some good literature coming out on all of those topics in terms of the moral injury of the job, the increasing administrative burden. Almost 80% of all physicians work for somebody else, not for themselves anymore. So that's very different. Like, I wouldn't even take advice from somebody who practiced 20 years ago. The landscape is just enormously different. But what I think, like, I view myself as a canary in the coal mine, in the sense that I became a physician because, yes, there were external pressures to do so. And I hear this through line all the time where, like, smart kids, especially if you're like the smartest in your town, people always tell you, oh, you should be a doctor when you grow up. Yeah. Like, it's a common adage, and they do it. And I don't know, kids are impressionable, so they become doctors. Yeah. Okay. The issue is, I just think the culture of medicine, medical and surgical training, especially, like, for people like us, where I went into it because, of course, absolutely, like, it's honest work. You want to help people. And I have a skill set that would be of use to people. Let me go into this line of work. But then when you make the work environment nearly untenable, like I almost lost my life in residency, then it's a no-brainer. Intelligent people will leave. Yeah. And I've seen it increasingly where really, really bright, intelligent young people just don't go into medicine altogether, especially if they don't have like external pressures to do so. I think that word is really getting out in terms of, right, like the rap that medical training has, medical school, and then the years of residency, maybe fellowship. We need to make it appealing to younger people in some different ways, I think, to be able to like attract better and brighter students and then also retain them.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Just the climate, the landscape. I mean, it certainly in a lot of different settings, it's a malignant one, and it's not enticing or inducive to people that are coming behind us. Did you enjoy surgery at all? Being a surgeon?
I really enjoyed surgery when I was younger. Yes, and I would describe myself as somebody who could always see the planes. Like, I chose head and neck anatomy because I did really love that. I was drawn to that. In medical school, I just will say that by the end of PGY2 year, being in the OR was such an unpleasant experience. Again, explosive anger. from attendings, unpredictable, explosive outbursts from senior residents. Like, just all of that was so unpleasant. It was never worth it for me. Like, the juice is not worth the squeeze. It's important work. It's beautiful work. I love working with my hands. Those things are all true. But again, when you weight them against my experiences, it's just not even close to being worth it. And so I never got that spark back, I would say, like after training, in terms of, wow, I love being in the OR. So people should take that as maybe like an indication that they should not treat people so poorly in training that they never want to be in the OR anymore.
Yeah. And then you mentioned a near-death experience. Can you talk a little bit about that and kind of what happened? Was it, can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So halfway through my 4th year was really, that's when I mentioned that I like first ever stood up for myself. And again, it was like completely by necessity. It wasn't that I was like, oh, I'm going to sass my program director. It was not that. I was a teacher's pet for 30 years. Like, I really respect and like authority. I want the chain of command to work. It just didn't in my residency. And so essentially one of the attendings was just, again, in terms of unpredictable and random outbursts, clearly they were having a bad day, being beyond the average amount of unpleasant in the OR. And basically they asked during a neck dissection what a structure was. And I actually said, mylohyoid. And I thought that. I said, I think it's the mylohyoid, and I'll explain why. Just because of contextually, like where we're at in the surgery, this is kind of only muscle and the muscle fiber that I would expect to see here. But I even said, I was like, I'm surprised. The reason why I'm phrasing it that way is because I actually would have expected that instead of running this way, that the fibers would have run slightly like differently. Here's what I was picturing. They just freaked out. They were like, wow, did you even prepare for this case? And again, just being like, these insults feel very personal. They are right? Like, did you even prepare? And I'm terrified, right? Because I'm thinking, what is it then? Because there's definitely a habit. Like, if you got the question wrong, they would never tell you what the right one was. That's a really abhorrent way to learn, really like the most difficult possible way. So I'm thinking, well, what is that? They start really going in, like, if it's even true that you read, what did you read? And I was like, operative Odo and Myers. And they're just like, if that's even true and you read that, then you would know the next step. Again, just going in. Like, anyone who's been in an OR can probably just imagine this. And I remember thinking, if I could just have like a minute, I won't cry. I'll just like cool down. Did not get a minute. This person went in for like 20 minutes.
Jeez.
I had tears coming out the bottom of the mask. I mean, probably crying into the field. They still had me bovine on the carotid, which we were dissecting now, and then down to the cervical rootlets, just going in the whole time. And so eventually I said, I apologize, I can't see. May I use the restroom? And they were like, yeah, whatever, go. Couple things about that day. Number one, there was a general surgery rotator with us standing at the head of the bed, and this attending, like many that I've known, are quote unquote much meaner with an audience. Number two, one of the things that they said, they were like, what's wrong with you? How do you not know, what that muscle is? I was correct. It was the mylohyoid. What they took issue with was that I wasn't confident enough, because it should have been a 100% confidence answer. Not only that, but as things were escalating, I actually said, I really apologize. I haven't done a lot of neck dissections before. And I said that. It was true, and I said that. And they were like, well, how many have you done? I was like, I've been in like 2 neck dissections. And they said, there's no possible way that's true. Well, as you know, and as of course this attending in the department in which this is happening would know, even though I was halfway through my 4th year, we didn't have any 3rd years. I spent my whole 3rd year doing like 2nd year cases, and I spent my whole 4th year still covering 3rd year cases. So while it definitely is true that on average a mid PGY4 would have more neck dissections under their belt, I didn't. That was held against me in this like kangaroo court, which is kind of how many ORs were run. And I think are still run today, like this kangaroo court of just the accusations of lying. So anyway, I left the OR. There were like 8 hours left in this melanoma wide local excision neck dissection, and I never went back. I stayed at the hospital, which again is a testament to like how dutiful of an employee. I never would have left. I mean, I was still like at work. I sat there all day crying. And when my program director called me that night, I was still in the resident office at like 9 p.m., just had no idea what to do. I'd never left the OR before. It had never happened to me. So it had never happened to me. Now I left the OR. And the reason that I was pretty acutely suicidal for certainly the week, a few weeks afterwards, is just because that was like identity crushing for me, right? Like, so then who am I? If I'm a person who leaves the OR, then I have a lot of existential questions about myself and my core identity. But that's also why it's really life-threatening for people to only identify as like a doctor or a surgeon, because then something threatens that and it is life-threatening. Like I've experienced that.
That's all they know, yeah.
But it also, I think it just speaks to, I mean, that's why, so this is why I finally stood up for myself. Like that night when my program director called me and said, hey, that attending let me know there was like some issue in the OR today. It sounds like we need to work on your resilience. That's the exact moment that I was like, oh, I'm going to tell you what I think, respectfully. I don't have a resilience problem. I've been white knuckling it for 3.5 years here. You have a teaching problem. This is not, I mean, this is like a sham of a teaching institution, attending senior residents just bullying us every day and having us do admin and like clerical and clinical work for them. That's not, like, no teaching's occurring here. So you guys have a problem. I was like, I don't really have a resilience problem. I actually believe that to this day. So all of that happened. And I think the last thing that's really relevant to this story, this speaks to the importance of like storytelling and all of us connecting with other physicians. I called a friend crying after I left the OR. And so this was like an hour later, just could not stop crying. Again, freaking out. I had like no idea what to do. No precedent for it. I'd never left the OR before. I didn't know of anyone leaving the OR. I was just like, I'm for sure not going back in there with this attending. So what happened is when I called them crying, I said, I'm like crying too much to go back in. I don't really know what to do. This person literally said to me, who I've known for years and years, don't worry. This has happened to me multiple times. Just collect yourself and, you know, like it'll be okay. You'll probably within half an hour, you'll naturally stop crying and then head back in. And I was like, you know, we've known each other for years and years and years and actually been pretty close. And you're telling me that this has happened to you multiple times.
Yeah.
Right? But most surgeons would be too embarrassed to really admit it. I think that what I refuse to buy into is that this story is embarrassing for me. Yeah. I actually do think it's quite embarrassing for someone. I just like am not going to accept that on my shoulders.
When your program director called you and he basically pointed the finger back at you, how did that make you feel?
Yeah, it made me feel angry. Yeah, it made me feel angry. A lot of unfair stuff had, of course, happened in residency up to that point, but I think that the severity of it, like the degree of it, where if somebody hears that story, and I'm sure he was given a different story, right, by the attending, to conclude like that resident is not resilient enough is like the most wrong conclusion. And so I guess in a real sense, it just made me outrageously angry.
Yeah, and that's the first time you actually kind of stood up for yourself at that point. And then how did that make you feel when you kind of told him that, no, this is not the problem. The problem is this here. How did that make you feel?
I wish I could say that it, you know, made me feel good in any way. It really didn't. I was acutely suicidal because of like the trauma of just experiencing all of that. And then again, having to grapple with the aftermath. Like I had nightmares about that attending for just months to years after.
Wow.
Like just because it's so interesting, I almost viewed it as like that attending showed me maybe where my line in the sand or where my limit is. And if you view that as a very bad thing, then they showed me something that I wasn't willing to accept about myself. I will say that probably by about a year after it happened, I'm proud of myself. I like look back at that person and I'm like, wow, you finally like took care of yourself and like actually stood up for yourself. And I don't think that there's something wrong with that. It did not feel good at the time because I felt like just a loser.
Yeah, and I'd imagine that had to be a very difficult decision. Which path do I take? Do I just follow the same path that a lot of others before me have taken and suck it up, put my mask back on, go back in the OR, and just accept this, all of the trauma and everything that you're going through, or kind of stand up for myself and say, hey, this is enough is enough. And I just don't understand why. I saw that throughout residency and fellowship, in some aspects also, where people were just assholes for no reason. Like that's not how medical education should be, and that's certainly not how we should, the doctors that are coming behind us should be treated as well. So I always made it a point just to, treat people the way you want people to treat, or treat patients the way that, you want someone to treat your family member. So I'm sorry you had to go through that. That's terrible. And I'm glad that you had that opportunity to kind of step up for yourself. And I think you being just out telling your story is going to help so many people. That makes me so happy. And I'm just honored to kind of have you just share your story, because, some people, like you said, don't get the opportunity to speak up because of retaliation or fear of not progressing to the next level, or feeling that, some hospital or their supervisor may hold that against them. So, I think what you did kind of was the right thing, and I think it's going to help a lot of people. There's another quote that I came across, that about 300 to 400 physicians commit suicide every year. And it's not something that is talked about a lot, but that's almost one doctor a day that commits suicide because of reasons like this. What do you think what needs to happen for this whole kind of culture shift, so things like this don't happen in the future, or continuously happen over time? What needs to change?
Two things that I think will make a difference are, number one, having better role models, and number two, better leadership. Like, those are just both vacuums in my experience. Like, having just gotten out 3 months ago, I spent 13 years on that hamster wheel, or on that conveyor belt. And like, the role models that model a totally different type of behavior, especially in surgery, they're just few and far between. And then the importance of leadership is that when there are issues at work, they need to be handled ideally by like a competent leader, and a fair and skilled leader. Unfortunately, what happens in medicine in a lot of these medical institutions is that, like, being a really good surgeon does not automatically equal being a good leader. Being in a department for like the longest amount of time does not equal being a really good leader. Sure. And so what I experienced in training was like, it's so funny because we just talk about, like, my PD as a person was quite pleasant. And during quote unquote peace times, probably a good PD. Like, I would think that that's true. I've heard that from other people. I think that was probably true my intern year. But the question is, if the wheels fall off, which they can, every year there's different chief residents, attendings come and go. If the wheels fall off, who is going to step in and, again, model good behavior and like take care of problems and say, this is what's acceptable here, this isn't what's acceptable here? We just did not have that. So when it became like a really tense, troubling environment, it just stayed that way for years and years and kind of like snowballed. I do think that the physician suicide, especially resident physician suicide, it's just a devastating reality. Yeah. Those of us who can relate even in some small way know how important of an issue this is. Not just speaking for myself, I know many others who can relate. I had people reach out to me, some of my younger colleagues, even just in the past month, 2 resident physician suicides, actually. And one of them was at my training institution. It was a pathology resident who actually was just graduating and didn't show up for their fellowship. And that's how that was discovered, so these issues get swept under the rug for sure. Nobody wants to like publicize or really memorialize that. But I care a lot about it, and I'm trying to.
Yeah, and it said that out of physicians as a career choice, it has a higher suicide rate compared to other career fields, which I thought was pretty interesting as well. So you finished your residency, and then how was that transition into practice? Did you find that difficult as well?
No, I was happy to be out of residency, and I feel like it took me about 6 months to really get the practice like up and running. I started a hospital-employed ENT practice, but there hadn't been any preceding ENTs, so it was solo practice and just really setting up like from nothing. But no, it was a good challenge. Again, I just think that given my residency experience, I had a 3-year attending contract that I wanted to see through. By about 1 year ago, or 2 years into the contract, I really knew, okay, this was going to be it.
Yeah, and then when did that first hit you in practice for you to kind of think about that decision, like, hey, this is not for me? I know you had some of those thoughts throughout residency, but in practice, you just say, hey, what should I do next? Was there a certain point where...
Just truly like the whole time. And obviously, understandably, a lot of people have like questions about finances. They're like, how could somebody leave medicine?
Yeah.
If I didn't financially have to work as an attending, I never would have. Like, absolutely. Those are very real realities. Yep. So I worked as an attending for one contract. I took all this extra call, 15 days of call a month for 3 years. To even have a shot at, and that's separate from like other jobs I started working to get additional income streams, and that was to have a shot at getting out, because absolutely, it's really like a tenuous financial time. Like that would be hard for most people unless they have family money to say, I'm graduating from residency, I'm not going to practice clinically, like I'm done. That would be really hard. I could not have done it.
Yeah, I can see that would be very challenging, especially after putting in so much sweat equity and the amount of years and time that it takes to get to that point. Especially a lot of people are coming out of medical school with $200,000, $300,000 in student debt. I can see why some people would kind of put up with kind of what's going on. And neglect everything else, their mental health, their physical health, a lot of the physical elements that come along with stress and burnout, diabetes. We kind of talked about that before starting. But yeah, I can see why some people would just kind of put up with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, another factor that's very real for a lot of people is like having dependents, which I don't. And so yes, I'm sharing my journey because either way, I want to show that it's possible for a person to do this and like walk away from clinical practice without being ashamed of it. Like there's nothing shameful about it. But I totally get that if somebody in my position had like 2 young kids, they might say, I could never leave. And obviously, I'm not qualified to comment on that. All I can do is share my journey.
Yeah, and how did your family and friends kind of react to you telling them that, hey, these are my plans and this is what I plan to do?
Yeah, I think really happy for me.
Yeah.
Anyone who knows me, what's so funny is they knew it better than I knew it, because I'll use the example of one of my best girlfriends from medical school. She's in peds, and about 1.5 years ago, so it would have been like halfway point of the contract, we were on vacation together, and I told her, I was like, look, this is what it is. I'm writing a book. I'm doing all this other stuff. And she was so happy for me. She was like, that makes perfect sense. And I was like, what do you mean it makes sense? Like, this was the first person I told. I was like, what do you mean it makes sense? Like, how did you know? And she was like, even in medical school, you were always scheming. You always, I feel like maybe what other people saw that I might have, for self-protective reasons, been blind to, is that they saw like, oh, this is not this person's dream job. It never was. I wasn't willing to admit it because of all of my different hangups and the baggage surrounding it. But she was like, that makes perfect sense. Good for you.
Yeah. And then that last day that you walked out of your clinic, hospital, or how did you feel at that point? What was going through your mind at that time? Yeah,
I just felt free. And I feel Like that has only improved every day. But I felt free. It was almost the same way that I felt after graduating residency in terms of like, it feels like a jailbreak.
Correct.
Like, oh, I don't have to work with these people anymore. Like, I don't know. I would describe it as like a jailbreak. And also the two big issues are making sure that you have already done the work to decenter your identity. Cause like this time it wasn't life threatening, far from it. I mean, like it, sure. There's always some grief with like the end of a chapter, but that's it. Just a dash of grief, not much grief with ending a chapter. If you've decentered your identity, it wasn't threatening to me to leave the hospital. And then also, I just really think having like this different perspective on it helped me file it in a way that was like very healthy and effective. And I do believe that no experience is wasted. So I think it just genuinely permitted me to show up for my next phase and all these new jobs with like the right mindset.
Yeah, I think that's, you're absolutely correct. And I do echo your statement about the jailbreak after residency and fellowship. I mean, that feeling is just indescribable because throughout their whole process in medical school, residency, and fellowship, someone tells you what time to be there, how long you're going to be there, what you're going to be doing when you're there. You have to ask for permission to take off or to take leave or take vacation. And just not to have that whatsoever, it like blew my mind when I finished my training. And it's like one of the best feelings ever. So it's been 3 months. What has surprised you the most about life outside of medicine? What would you say?
Well, again, probably a surprise only to me and not to like people who know me. But while I am happy to be out of the OR and I don't miss clinical practice or anything like that, there are things about being a surgeon, which I don't know if they're just me or if it's that I, worked that field for so many years. But what's surprising is I've just taken a lot of like that surgical dedication and approach and have now put it into my new work, which is in a different industry. Mm-hmm. So it's just funny. And I joke that like to everyone who thinks that working for yourself means that your boss isn't an asshole anymore, I have bad news for you. Like, and that's just very much, but those are internal processes where even like if I'm tired or if my body's at its limit, I don't stop. Like there's still things on the to-do list or there's still, items in my inbox. Like I'm still grinding. And I do think that there's something about that where I don't want to still be there 10 years from now. But when I look back on my life, again, I'm 33 years old. I don't know any version of me at any age who wasn't like working really hard and grinding.
Yeah, and I'm a huge believer in that everything happens for a reason. My background kind of growing up and family members in and out of prison, and mom was shot when she dealt with a drug addiction, and dad went to jail and things like that. I think those things really, everything happens for a reason, and those things really made me the person who I am today. So I think this experiences and unfortunately the way that they were with you and everything you had to go through, I think it's going to make you that much better of a person, entrepreneur, and just a business owner, leader, like overall. And I do think our experiences really shape who we are today. What are your thoughts about that?
Yep, exactly. I'm definitely in an era where I'm trying to take the good with the bad, but I'm also trying to minimize the bad because I just do think that you even alluded to this earlier at the beginning of our conversation, like addiction to stress, and just, I mean, if you've been going for so long, if it's been 13 years since I like took a breath, now technically I'm being told I could take a breath, but I'm like, I don't even know what that would look like. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. Well, if you had a pre-med student that came up to you and let's say they just walked into here and they said, hey, Francis Mei, I want to go to medical school and I want to be a surgeon, or I just want to be a pediatrician or a neurologist. What advice would you give to that student?
Yeah, I would say just that, studying the textbooks, getting high test scores and having good bedside manner even, those things are not enough. I think that when I was coming up, I was brought up to believe those things would be enough. Like, that's what makes a good student trainee doctor. And the piece I was missing the whole time was really like interpersonal skills, effective communication skills, a good mindfulness practice, and also like knowing myself really well. I know that that sounds cheesy, and I just did not understand what people were saying my whole 20s. I feel like people gave me that good advice, like, hey, it's important to know yourself. You should like get to know yourself and figure out what you really want. I just blew right through all of that. I was like a really competitive gunner with blinders on. And I just think I would advise people against that, because knowing yourself really well, and certainly I see this a lot with like non-traditional students, they often have better outcomes. Like, knowing yourself well means that your decisions have a better shot at being like in line with what you think you're gonna want. I am the other extreme in terms of, I decided to apply to medical school at 18 years old. I never reevaluated that decision until I was, I don't know, seriously at 31, right? That's a really long time to not like check in with yourself or think about if this is like the path we want to be on. I was on autopilot all those years.
Yeah. And then what advice would you have for doctors who are burnt out but feel trapped in the system? What would you say to those doctors?
Yeah, I would say that in my case, all I can really speak to is what worked for me, which is that I felt trapped for a really, really long time. It took a significant toll on my physical and mental health. Two things happened. Number one, when I was a chief resident, I started going to therapy, really by the end of fourth year. And that therapist, he said to me, when I said, well, I'm trapped, I have no options, I have to come to work every day. He was the first person to ever really be like, you're an adult. And I was 28 years old and I still felt like a kid who was like stuck in this educational system. He was like, you're an adult and it feels really good to take ownership over your decisions. You have agency. So you aren't trapped. You are agreeing, like, do you want to leave residency? Yes or no? And by that point I was saying, no, I only have a year and change left. I want to see this through. And he's saying, so you've made your decision. So you have to square up and take ownership of your decisions. That felt really good. The second piece that I would say is that ultimately when I decided to leave as an attending, and I felt like trapped, what's really nice is that I just had to give myself permission to leave, and then all those doors opened up. Like I said, my friends, they probably were like, I hope she leaves medicine. She's like so grumpy now. Same thing. I mean, even in my marriage, like people always say, wow, your poor husband, like he thought he was marrying a surgeon and now he's marrying no one, like as if you're not a surgeon, it's like binary and now I'm not a catch anymore. But I just think every single person in my life benefited from me leaving medicine. I didn't have to convince anybody other than convincing myself. So if you're trapped, you kind of have if you feel trapped, you have two options, which are to decide like, I'm going to take ownership of my decisions and stay here, or you decide I am leaving. And then when you decide I am leaving, again, you don't really have to convince anyone else. Like, it's pretty much many accounts that I've heard of people doing second act careers just comes down to you give yourself permission. There's a lot of shadow boxing that happens, or like, I'll call my friend and be like, yeah, here's why I think it's not embarrassing for me to leave clinical practice. And your friends are like, oh, no one said that. Like, who are you fighting with? And it's like, we do these loops internally.
Yeah, that's certainly some great advice. And I know a lot of doctors are in similar situations, but they either don't know how to take that next step or are afraid to. So I think that's some great advice that they can use to navigate that situation. What's next for you? You've been out for medicine for about 3 months. I know you have a lot of great things on the horizon. I checked out is it a Hippocratic?
Collective. Yep.
Collective. And then you mentioned a book that's coming out, and tell us about what's coming up for you.
Absolutely. Yes, we're doing a lot. And I will say to those people who, again, they feel trapped, they don't know where to start. Over the past 3 years, I have tried like 100 different things. And that's what I've tried to be transparent about, because I know it's really easy to look at it and say like, okay, so any surgeon could just like leave their attending job and do consulting. Like, I tried 100 things. 85 did not work. So again, people don't see that. Social media is a highlight reel. 15 things were meaningful leads. Of those, 5 were successes, right? Of those 5 successes, 2 to 3 pay money, right? So I mean, like, we really had to like shift the gauge for these things. But in terms of what I'm really excited about now, I do have the Hippocratic Collective.
Nice.
You know, I'm a co-founder, and we launched May 1st. So
congratulations. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank
you. And I know, you know, similarly, your web space was born just this spring as well. It's it's really fun to like bring, I almost want to call it like new life into the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have a great group of people who I work with. It just like, it hits very different to respect the people that you work with.
Yeah.
I've been missing that for a really long time. And, you know, we have a great group of people at the Hippocratic Collective. What we do there is that our mission is to really get physicians back into the game. The next generation, Generation Z and beyond, they're all digital natives. You know, I'm a young millennial. All of us are digital natives, and the fact that physicians have not really been allowed to be on social media or be present online, or if they are, they get policed pretty heavily, has just meant that now there's a ton of misinformation. It means that the people who are in their late teens getting health info from TikTok might be people who don't practice evidence-based medicine, right? And so I just think that physicians, one of the reasons why even culturally, societally, they're viewed as like not a real player is because they took themselves completely out of the game. So at the Hippocratic Collective, what we're doing is like platforming physician voices, also organizing them. There are singular, really brilliant personalities and physicians out there who are doing their own thing. This is meant to be like an umbrella or a home for people to organize under, because as we then build the audience, not to become influencers, and none of us, you know, identify as influencers, then part 3 is actually be able to like demand better for the next generation. Because like, frankly, I've been demanding better for the next generation of doctors for a really long time. Power is not power if you don't know that you have it.
Yep.
So combining, you know, many physicians who believe in this mission together, that is something that really has a shot at like changing the narrative. And then of course, like storytelling, creativity is very healing for people in medicine, and storytelling is how we change the culture.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have a book that you're working on as well?
Yes, my book is like 90% done,
Awesome.
but it's my memoir, and a lot of my growth journey happened purely because of the book, especially for a really stubborn, petulant, only child like myself. It took writing the full first draft of the book, and I brought it to my husband, and I was so proud of it because like it's not easy to write 65,000 words.
Yeah.
And he read it, and he was like, most of this is not true. And I was like, beans, you know, it wasn't even deliberate. There are a lot of lies that we tell ourselves. Honestly, surgeons, more than like the average person probably, I can speak to that, just different mental gymnastics. And so I think that was a jump off point for a lot of like the healing and work that I've done since. And now I know myself better, and I can show up authentically, not show up as this person who's like, I'm a surgeon. That's like important. Everyone's got to kiss the ring. And then the last thing that I'll mention is just I really love like my consulting work that I do for companies that work with physicians, get to meet great people that way. I think that I can bridge really well like companies who market to physicians, but yet like there's no MD on the team. And if you've never met a residents are so weird and like an insular group, you need to like know the in-group language and to not be so off-putting to them. So that type of work. And then I edit, I help other physicians write their books. So that's those are all the things that I've cobbled together.
That's awesome. You're staying busy. Absolutely.
I'm busy, booked and busy.
Yeah. What do you like to do outside of the medicine, entrepreneurial space? What do you like to do outside of those things?
Just really the simple things. I mean, again, I have not had a lot of free time lately. When I do have free time that I carve out, I sit in the sauna, I go for a long walk with my dog, or I like to get drinks, like on a rooftop. I have really, really simplified. Even my reading for enjoyment it's been less than I'd like it to be, and it's just because I read so much for work. Like since I'm going through a lot of manuscripts, or again writing with other people on their books.
Yeah, awesome. And then any websites, links you want to mention? I will put them in the show notes. But yeah, where can people find more information about you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Please check out our website, which is hippocratic-collective.com. And then you can find me on Instagram or TikTok at Frances Mei MD.
Yep, and then you have a podcast too, because I was listening to podcast episode this morning. Can you tell
yes,
about your podcast
Surgeon
episode?
Interrupted, which is a play on Girl Interrupted, and of course, like this show came out, this spring, and we knew that I was leaving and everything. But Surgeon Interrupted, it's available on Spotify or Apple, pretty much anywhere that you would get your podcasts, and we just cut up on there.
Awesome. Well, Frances Mei, thank you so much for joining us today on the WebbMD Podcast. It's certainly been a pleasure and an honor to just hear your story and your kind of resilience and just the fortitude to make that decision to not go through something if you're not happy, and especially through the all of the hard times, as well as everything that you had to go through throughout your training and practice. So it's certainly inspiring to meet someone who has took that leap of faith and has actually done it. I've certainly had those thoughts along the years, but there's I always tell students that the first thing you have to do, go into the medical field, especially in this climate, is to figure out kind of what your exit strategy is, and that's usually kind of my advice for them. But yeah, I think this is great. It's going to inspire a lot of people. There's a lot of physicians, students, medical students, residents going through the same thing. And to be able to hear someone who's gone through this and has successfully navigated is truly an honor to hear that and witness that myself. So thank you
so much.
And for everyone else, thank you for watching this and listening to this episode of the WebbMD Podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.